December, 1941. America doesn't enter the war slowly. It's pulled into it overnight. Sirens cut through early mornings. Newspapers hit doorsteps before sunrise. People listen to the radio longer than they should. Something has shifted, even if no one says it out loud. Recruitment offices fill quickly. Lines wrap around buildings. Young men wait with their hands in their pockets, rehearsing answers they haven't been asked yet. Some talk about duty. Some talk about country. Some just want to leave whatever they're standing in. Charles Buchinski is one of them. He stands near the back of the line in a small Pennsylvania town. Not because he's unsure. Because he's in no hurry. Charles is 20 years old, but the number doesn't match the way he looks. Coal dust has settled into his skin in a way that doesn't wash out. His hands are rough, scarred, split at the knuckles. His shoulders already carry a slight bend. He's been underground since he was 10. 11 years in the mines. 11 years without daylight. 11 years learning how the earth sounds before it collapses. Down there, men don't talk about the future. They talk about the next shift. The next breath of clean air. Charles has watched men disappear into shafts and never come back. Watched bodies pulled out hours later, quiet and gray. Watched supervisors replace them before the week is over. In the mines, death isn't dramatic. It's expected. So when Charles reaches the front of the line, he doesn't feel brave. He feels practical. The recruitment officer looks him over. Sees a young man who already looks worn down. Asks the standard questions. Why do you want to enlist? Charles doesn't pause to find the right words. He doesn't reach for anything heroic. He says, I just want to stay above ground. The officer looks at him for a moment longer than usual. Then nods. A few forms later, Charles is assigned to the Army Air Forces. Not as a pilot. Not as an officer. As a gunner. Someone explains what that means. Explains altitude. Cold. Explains how many missions it takes before you're done. 25. Most crews don't make it that far. Charles listens without interrupting. He's used to numbers like that. Used to odds that don't favor the man doing the work. 2 weeks later, he leaves Pennsylvania behind. The mines. The town. The life that was already written for him. Training is loud and relentless. Engines screaming. Metal vibrating. Instructors shouting over the noise. He learns to operate heavy machine guns with frozen fingers. Learns to track movement in thin air. Learns how long it takes a man to fall from 30,000 feet. They show films. Bombers breaking apart. Fire in the sky. Men dropping away. Some trainees look down. Some leave the room. Charles keeps watching. To him, it feels familiar. Different setting. Same ending. When training ends, he's assigned to a bomber crew headed for the Pacific. 10 men. Most of them younger than him. On the morning of their first mission, the airstrip is quiet. Engines idle. Oxygen masks hang loose. Charles climbs into the tail section of the aircraft. The last position. The one furthest from the cockpit. As the plane lifts off, the ground falls away quickly. The world flattens. Then disappears. At 30,000 feet, the sky doesn't feel open. It feels empty. The first missions don't feel like movies. They feel like distance. Hours of flight with nothing to look at but instrument lights and thin sky. Engines humming at the same pitch for so long the sound starts to live inside your head. Charles learns the rhythm quickly. Briefing before sunrise. Walk to the aircraft in silence. Climb into position while the ground crew moves with practiced calm. Then take off. The plane climbs in wide, slow circles. Every 1,000 feet steals warmth from the metal. Every 1,000 feet takes a little more air away. At altitude, the world changes. Breath becomes mechanical behind the oxygen mask. Hands slow down, not from fear, but from cold. The kind of cold that makes a simple twist of a knob feel expensive. In the tail, Charles sits alone. There's no view of the crew. No view of the cockpit. No sense of the bomber as a whole. Just vibration. And the empty space behind the aircraft. The first time they cross into enemy territory, nothing happens. No fighters. No fire from the ground. A nervous laugh crackles over the intercom. Someone says maybe it won't be so bad. Charles doesn't answer. He's learned not to trust quiet. By the third mission, they see anti-aircraft bursts in the distance. Black clouds that bloom and vanish in the sky. Far enough away to feel unreal. The pilot adjusts course. The bomber shudders once. Then keeps going. When they land, the ground crew walks around the aircraft, counting holes like a farmer counting dents in a truck after a hailstorm. A few punctures. Nothing serious. That night, the men eat together, talking louder than necessary. Jokes that don't quite land. Stories that circle the truth without touching it. Everyone pretends the day went exactly as planned. By the fifth mission, the routine has hardened. No one jokes during briefing anymore. No one asks how long until the tour is done. They all know the number. 25. On the airstrip, they begin to notice small differences. A plane coming in with a damaged engine. A crew chief looking up and shaking his head before the wheels even touch the runway. A medic walking out a little too quickly. Then, one day, a bomber returns with an empty seat. At first it's just one man missing. A radio operator who didn't make it to the ditching raft. A gunner who never got his parachute on in time. The next week, it's an entire crew. 10 men gone, swallowed by distance. No funeral. No ceremony. A name crossed off a list. A new crew arriving 2 days later. Charles watches it happen with a strange familiarity. In the mines, men vanished too. A cave-in. A gas pocket. A bad rope. A man would be gone, and the next shift would still start at dawn. Up here, it's the same logic. The work continues. By the 8th mission, Charles stops thinking in terms of safe and dangerous. He starts thinking in terms of quiet and not quiet. The quiet missions are worse. Because when nothing happens, you have time. Time to notice the thinness of the air. Time to feel your heartbeat through layers of gear. Time to imagine what it would be like if the plane suddenly wasn't there anymore. On one long flight home, the aircraft vibrates in a way that feels different. Not a loud problem. A small one. No one explains it. The intercom stays quiet. The pilot doesn't speak. The navigator doesn't speak. Charles grips the handles of his guns and waits. Nothing happens. But the waiting stays with him. By the 10th mission, he begins to change without realizing it. Not into a fearless man. Fear doesn't disappear. It becomes a background pressure. Constant. Flat. It makes people different kinds of quiet. Some men become reckless, like they're daring fate to pick them. Some become rigid, holding their bodies too tight, wasting energy. Charles becomes still. He learns to move only when it matters. To watch without staring. To listen without hunting for meaning. He learns the sound of the bomber the way he learned the sound of the mines. A small creak that means metal is under stress. A slight pitch change that means an engine is working too hard. The silence that means the crew is thinking the same thought but won't say it. And somewhere in that routine, the sky stops feeling like freedom. It starts feeling like a place that watches. The mission briefing is shorter than usual. No extra talk. No details that don't matter. The target is deep. The flight will be long. The men walk out to the aircraft before sunrise, their boots loud on the concrete. Engines idle like animals waiting to be used. Charles climbs into the tail section and straps in. Checks the guns. Checks the ammunition. Checks the window behind him. The sky is dark and clean. For hours, nothing happens. They fly above clouds that look soft from up here. Like they were painted on the world instead of part of it. The bomber climbs to altitude, and the cold arrives the way it always does, quietly, without asking permission. Charles's breath becomes loud behind the oxygen mask. The metal around him feels harder, sharper. He keeps scanning the space behind the plane. Empty. Then, the pilot's voice cuts through the intercom. Calm. Controlled. Fighters. 6 o'clock. Charles leans forward. At first, he sees nothing but distance. Then he sees movement. Small shapes growing larger too quickly. The first tracer rounds appear like red stitches in the air. The bomber shudders. Metal screams somewhere forward of him. The sound of bullets hitting a plane at altitude is not like the movies. It's not one big crash. It's a sharp, constant tearing, like someone dragging a blade over thin sheet metal. Charles brings the guns up. He doesn't rush. He waits for the angle. Waits for the movement to make sense. Then he fires. The recoil travels through his arms and into his chest. The tail section fills with vibration and noise. He tracks one fighter carefully, leading it the way they taught him. Not aiming at where it is, but where it will be. He sees his rounds connect. A dark ribbon of smoke appears behind the enemy plane. It breaks away and drops, vanishing into the clouds below. There's no time to feel anything about it. Another fighter takes its place. The sky is suddenly crowded. Commands over the intercom. Short sentences. Numbers. Direction changes. Someone reports a damaged engine. Someone reports hydraulics struggling. Then a new sound, deeper, sudden. Charles turns his head just in time to see it. A bomber in their formation takes a direct hit. For 1 second it's still there, intact and flying. Then it isn't. A bright, violent bloom. Fragments scattering into empty air. The space where it was becomes nothing. Another bomber begins to spin. Its tail section is gone. The aircraft turns slowly at first, then faster, as if the sky itself is twisting it. Charles watches, unable to look away. Parachutes appear. 1. 2. More. Not enough. He stops counting, not because he can't, but because the number feels like something he shouldn't own. The engagement lasts minutes. It feels long enough to grow into memory. When it ends, the formation is broken. Every plane runs alone. Charles's bomber is still flying, but it doesn't feel stable. One engine is gone. Another is struggling. Fuel pressure is dropping. No one says the words, "We might not make it." But the silence in the intercom says it for them. The coastline finally appears hours later. Thin. Distant. The landing is hard. Not controlled. Not graceful. The bomber hits the runway and skids, shaking like it wants to fall apart in protest. It stops far too close to the end. For a moment, no one moves. Engines wind down. Silence fills the aircraft like water. The men climb out slowly and look back at the bomber. Damage is everywhere. Later, someone walks around the aircraft counting holes. He stops. Starts again. Stops again. As if the number is too big to say out loud. A crew chief points at the tail section. A hole punched clean through the metal. 6 inches from where Charles had been sitting. No one comments on it. No one laughs. No one says, "You got lucky." Because luck is a word you don't say at places like this. That night, Charles lies in his bunk fully dressed, staring at the ceiling. He thinks about the mines. About how death came without warning underground. No sound. No sky. No time. Up here, death is different. You see it. You hear it coming. And once you've heard it, once you've watched a plane disappear into fire in a place where nothing should burn, something in you shifts. It's not fear. It's a kind of clarity. The understanding that the sky is not open. It's just wide. The bomber doesn't fly for a week after that mission. Too much damage. Too many repairs. For the crew, the waiting is worse than the flight. In the air, there is always something to do. Something to watch. Something to respond to. On the ground, there is only time. Time to replay small details. The moment the pilot's voice changed. The first tracer line cutting through the air. The empty space where another bomber used to be. Men try to empty their minds in different ways. Cards. Drinks. Loud stories. Some speak as if they're trying to talk the fear out of their bodies. Charles doesn't. He eats when it's time to eat. Sleeps when he can. Sits alone when he can't. He isn't thinking about being brave. He's thinking about the sound of metal tearing. When the bomber is finally repaired, no one celebrates. They climb back in. The missions continue. Not every flight ends in combat. Some flights are quiet, almost peaceful, until the bombs are dropped and the plane turns for home. Those flights are the worst. Because on those flights, the mind has room to wander. Charles begins to notice how war settles into men. Some men become reckless, as if they're trying to outrun the fear by moving faster than it. Some men become rigid, holding their bodies too tight. Their shoulders ache. Their hands shake. Their eyes stop blinking normally. Charles becomes still. By the 15th mission, he wastes no movement. He checks his equipment the same way, in the same order, every time. Not as superstition. As control. Something small he can own. The mess hall gets quieter. Empty seats become normal. Names crossed off lists become normal. New men arrive and try to smile too hard. They act like they're entering a story with a happy ending. The older crews don't correct them. It's not cruelty. It's exhaustion. By mission 20, Charles stops thinking about home. Not because he doesn't want it. Because home feels like a different planet. The world has narrowed to 3 things. The climb. The altitude. The space behind the plane. During one long flight, his oxygen mask fogs slightly from his breath. He hears himself breathing louder than the engine. For a moment, he imagines the mines again. The weight above him, the closeness of air, the feeling of being trapped. He adjusts the mask. Looks out into open sky. The feeling passes. He understands something then, without putting words to it. Survival isn't a moment. It's endurance. The ability to keep showing up without believing it will get easier. Mission 24 ends quietly. No losses. No dramatic landing. The bomber rolls to a stop, and the crew climbs out without speaking. No one mentions the next flight. They all know what the last mission can do. That night, Charles lies awake. Not thinking about dying. Thinking about distance. How far he is from the boy who entered the mines. How far he is from the man who stood in line at the recruitment office. At dawn, he gets up. Puts on his gear. Walks toward the aircraft without hesitation. The engines start. And the sound is familiar now. Almost comforting. Which is the strangest part of all, the final mission begins like the others. Before sunrise. Engines warming in the dark. No one says it out loud, but everyone knows. 25. The bomber climbs to altitude. The cold arrives. Oxygen masks on. Hands steady. Enemy fire appears earlier than expected. Black bursts blooming in the distance, then closer. Fighters follow soon after. The sky fills with motion. Charles does his job. No rush. No hesitation. No anger. Just focus. When it ends, the bomber is still flying. Damaged, but intact. They land hard. Not clean. Not pretty. But alive. On the ground, the crew gathers without celebration. No cheering. No laughter. Just exhaustion. Someone finally says it. That's it. Charles nods. Nothing else. A few weeks later, he's back in Pennsylvania. The town looks the same. The mines look the same. People shake his hand and call him a hero. Ask what it was like. They want exciting stories. They want a clean ending. He keeps his answers short. Says it was hard. Says he's glad it's over. They don't know what to do with the silence that follows, so they stop asking. He tries going underground again. Lasts 3 days. The air feels wrong now. Too close. Too heavy. He leaves. Later, someone suggests acting classes. The GI Bill will pay for them. He goes without expectation. Sits quietly. Listens. When it's his turn, he doesn't perform emotion. He doesn't raise his voice. He just stands still. And the room pays attention. Years pass. Directors struggle to understand him. Say he's too hard. Too serious. Too quiet. He doesn't explain. He's learned that real things don't need explanation. When the roles finally come, they aren't glamorous. They're men who've seen too much. Men who don't talk unless they have to. Men who carry something invisible in the way they stand. He plays them without effort. Because at 30,000 feet, Charles Buczynski learns something he never forgot. That danger doesn't announce itself. That survival changes how you move through the world. And that authenticity isn't something you practice. It's something you carry. The war ends. The flights stop. But what he learned up there stays with him. Long after the engines go quiet.